Today I'm going to show you what's inside of this Mercedes Smart diesel engine and how it works. Now this engine produces a mere 41 horsepower, and that's the exact opposite of this Mercedes V8 that I just tore down, which produces 460 horsepower. Nevertheless, this is a 3-cylinder engine with a common rail diesel. Now the AC compressor is locked up, the alternator is locked up, apparently the starter was locked up and burnt up, but the engine does still roll over, so we're going to tear this down to see just what happened. Now contrary to what you might think, this is a normal engine. It just sits a little bit slanted. We've got our accessories up at the front here. There's even a turbocharger at the back here. Yeah, and it still produces only 41 horsepower. Regardless, the Smart is a very light car anyways. On this side here, you can see we've got our intake with our large drive-by-wire throttle body motor that comes into the intake on this side, even though you don't need throttle bodies on diesels. Now this is from a 2005 model with 300,000 kilometers on it. The direct injection rail is over here, and it's got its little pipes that go over to the 3 injectors sitting on top of here. And this is the direct injection pump driven off the camshaft. I'm going to go ahead and start removing anything. Yeah. Alright, so it's a 14. Might have to use my timing cover removal tool here. Give it a little encouragement. It's still got a couple of drops of fuel inside. Alright, let's see if we can pull the injectors first. It's a decent sized injector. It's got some grease on there. And next up we got the fuel rail. So on the back side here there is a sensor for the pressure. And on the front side here we have some hoses. Oh, there's some fuel dripping out. So one of the lines leads down to this clear line over here. Interestingly held together with zip ties. There is a sensor over here. Just get some stuff off the front here. I can pull this down. Here we have the glow plug. Now this box is actually the intake, so cute and small. I'm going to go ahead and remove all the E10s holding it to the block. Can be removed. Pull. There we go. Finally can get this hose out of the way. Executive decision. One vacuum hose is going to hurt. Now I can get this intake off. Cute little intake. Check out all the carbon material built up inside of there. Ports themselves inside are also pretty nasty. Such a cute little intake that also doubles as an engine cover. Now diesels are compression ignition. When the piston moves up, it just ignites because of pressure. They don't need spark plugs. In fact, they just have these glow plugs here to warm up the cylinder on cold mornings only. Coming around the back side of the engine here, you can see the exhaust coming out here, and that goes into, I think it's the EGR valve. There's also a coolant line leading here, so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can remove this E12. So this EGR fastener here is a little bit too rusty and harder to get out. I'd rather get it off with the exhaust manifold, which is actually part of the turbo, as you can see. These are 12mm rusty bolts. Looks like I'm going to have to break them free one by one. Okay, turned. Look at this one, I had to bang a 10 on a 12 just to get that out. Let's get the rest of this turbo manifold out of here. Even way back 20-something years ago, they're still using non-reusable clamps. It's okay, I'm not going to be reusing this hose anyway. That's the coolant line that goes in to mix with your exhaust, and it comes out here. Yeah, we could take off the exhaust manifold. And one thing with EGR systems is that it really gums up your intake. As you can see, look at all of the soot and crust inside of this EGR intake valve here. That is absolutely crazy. And with diesel engines that burn really dirty like this, it makes it even worse. Now this would be your turbo housing with the wheel inside of here. This is the wastegate that controls if that turbo wheel is going to spin, or we're going to dump all that exhaust out this way to the downpipe. While I'm here, I got to remove this little engine mount. I'm going to use my cylinder head removal tool here. Fine. Oh damn! Alright, we'll get the 2-footer on there. There we go, that turned it. Alright, look at this. You can't even see what this is. There's the upper engine mount. Now I'm going to turn my attention back up right to this crusty direct injection pump. Sometimes my 3/8 drive E10 socket doesn't fit onto those things properly, but you can get away with using an 8mm in these E10s. Figure maybe it just needs a little bit of encouragement here. And pull off this direct injector pump. Oh, it's so stiff. So this is a return fuel system. We've got a pump coming in here that's going to bring it from the tank. This is going to spin up with this camshaft over here to pump it to many thousands of PSI and then send it to the injectors located on the block right in the middle here. Now we finally get to pop the hood to see what's underneath. And remove all the E10s holding this valve cover on. My timing chain cover removal tool here. Oh. Oh no, look how black it is in there. Looks like there's a plastic baffle in here. Can I take that off? Is it every time I gotta use this tool? So this baffle is actually metal, and there's just baffles where the oil air is gonna come in here, try to get trapped before going out this little vent tube over here. It's basically your positive crankcase ventilation system. So I lost my toothbrush for a sec there, but here's a look inside of this smart car's engine. You can see you've got a very simple cam caps on top of these cam lobes, which is one for each valve. That also sits on top of roller arms down below. The condition of the oil, of course, is going to be black, which is expected because this is a diesel engine. This one apparently ran 300,000 kilometers. So now that we got the top half cleared up, let's move over to the front here where we can remove some of these accessories. This is the AC pump. It's interesting that the pump itself is not frozen, just the idler going around it. Usually it's the other way around. I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Never realized how Canadian this car was until I started taking it apart. Rusty piece of crap. AC pump, definitely leaking a lot of this green dye stuff, which means there probably was a leak that someone was starting to diagnose. Oh no, look at all that stuff coming out. Yeah, I'm not getting to sleep in the house tonight. This stuff's gonna smell stink, bro. AC pump itself is small, yes, but not that small as I expected it to be. The smart car is a very small cabin compared to even a lot of other small cars. So I went and grabbed one of my wife's dress here, and I expect by the end of this video, this thing is going to be completely black, so let's see. Mercedes really couldn't make up their mind on the hardware for this one. This one's just using a regular 15mm. Oh damn, it's actually turning. Well, this is going to take a while, isn't it? Never make such a long bolt because they often get snapped because they're so long and twist. Got my timing chain cover removal tool here. Let's see how much this alternator is going to fight me. Alright, it came apart in pieces. So this is the joke of the water pump, which is actually behind the alternator that sat here. So crusty. Now the cooling system looks pretty simple. We've got our water inlet over here, and that connects right to the block. Then there's a piece that comes out here to our thermostat where our water connects to the radiator. Remember, the radiator on these cars are at the front of the car while the engine here is at the back of the car. And then we've got an extra piece here that goes to our EGR cooler. Let's see if I can remove this all as one piece. And then that can come out. Here's the water inlet that goes into the cooling jacket. Now we got here 2 E10s holding this to the head. Now, I don't like that they're using a plastic inlet or a plastic connector over here. They're also using these crimped connectors here, which means that these are one-time use hoses. The thermostat lives in there as well as the coolant temperature sensor. Let me just remove this crank. Thankfully, I was able to remove this crank bolt before mounting this to the stand. On the other hand, the idler pulley is made of plastic. Yes, I knew it was going to snap. Get this dipstick out of the way. Okay, I got a bunch of E10s to take off to get this timing cover off. See, they even bolted the oil pan to the timing cover. So there's this upper timing cover piece that comes out. See, this here is a little vacuum pump. It's got this little piece on here that notches into the camshaft, and that's going to rotate to create vacuum through this little nozzle over here to operate the brake booster or maybe the turbocharger's wastegate. Remember, this was long before the time of electronic wastegates. So inside of here there's 2 head bolts that I need to remove because they go into the timing cover down below. I'm going to attempt to see if this timing cover will come off. I never get that in modern. Oh, there's oil! Got the old microfiber cloth here. You can see the oil pan is full. I did not remove the oil. Just going to take out this little vacuum switching valve here. The bottom of the smart car's oil pan does not have any drain plug on either side. Instead, they expect you to siphon it out using that dipstick that I pulled out earlier with a special extraction machine, and then dump more oil in it to do your oil changes. So all that oil that I have in there is going to have to come out somehow. Taking a look at the very simple timing system on the smart car engine, you can see we've got a chain here for our oil pump off to the side, and then our main chain here with our tensioner that goes up to a single overhead camshaft. Obviously, there's no variable valve timing. It's a very simple steel gear. Kind of takes you back to the older school engine. To be honest, you could probably just pour fuel into this thing and it'll run because it is compression ignition. You don't need anything with the ignition system because there's no spark plugs and there's no electronics for the timing system. The gloves will start getting black. I'm going to start removing the timing system. Timing chain tensioner's got a bit of an oil galley right behind it, and it's also spring loaded, but there's no ratcheting mechanism. And here it's connected to the block and the head, so I'm going to have to come up with another way with a special tool to get this off. The least I can do is get this chain off here. Alright, supposedly these are threaded. I already tried it on this side and it snapped off, so that made it worse. I'm assuming you'd use a puller to pull this one out. And since I can't pull that out... Oh. just falls off. Does the other one fall off? I gotta say, this timing chain slide is really chintzy. There is a little tiny bit of wear on there, but if this has 300,000 kilometers on it, it actually held up pretty well. But the tensioner side for this slide here is actually a little bit more worn through than the other side. Now for the cam gear, there's some tiny E8s on here. I can pull the gear out. And for the cam caps, we're looking at E10s. I'm going to use the old dress to just wipe this down so we can take a look at those cam surfaces. Those cam surfaces are beautiful. This engine probably didn't have an oiling issue. Next, we can pop out the camshaft. And I'll just wipe this down again. Now before you make fun that this is such a tiny camshaft, remember V6 engines have something very similar because they too also power 3 cylinders on each bank. Moreover, Subaru's H4 Boxer engines have 2 cylinders on each bank, so they'll be even a little bit shorter than this. Nevertheless, this one's pretty hefty and I don't notice too much scoring or anything on here. Seems to be in pretty good shape. Looking down inside of here, looks like we've got our little roller arms. Okay, I don't know if this was me, but this roller arm here is a little offset. Yeah, it looks like we got some damage in here. That little hydraulic lifter is not happy. Alright, so this one looks kind of sad. You can see there's a sleeve on here that's kind of broken. I'm wondering if that's from the cylinder head itself. And this is what a regular one looks like. I also noticed that that valve was clean while all of the rest here are dirty. I also noticed there's some damage inside the cylinder head. It almost poked a hole through the cylinder head over here as that roller arm was kind of pushed up against the head over here. And this area inside the hydraulic cylinder is all eaten up, which would probably leak oil pressure. Before I can get these head bolts off, we gotta use the old toothbrush here. Brush off all the sand and crusty deposits so I don't strip the head bolts. These are a T55. Pretty tight for a little engine. Alright, let's zip these bolts off. Timing chain cover tool here. Pop this off. Oh, it's so cute! This engine is small. I can put my whole palm over it. It is a 0.8 liter engine, but it is a diesel. It produces a bit more torque, and it's got this characteristic bowl over here for direct injection to help propagate fuel and air to mix. The bottom of the engine head here is characteristically flat, especially compared to a modern engine which has more of a bowl shape and 4 valves per cylinder. Here are the glow plugs. There's no spark plugs on these, and here's where the direct injectors we inject into. Now this flat 2-valve design really reminds me of older school engines. Alright, I'm going to try to drain this engine, so let's see how much mess we're going to make. And it was then and there my battery died. Didn't make too much mess though. This engine sits slightly tilted because it's a small engine bay. That's why it's like triangular shaped. Looks really weird, but the worst thing is that there's no drain on it. I'm going to go ahead and remove all the E8s that hold this on. Timing chain cover removal tool here. Doesn't look too bad. I don't notice any sparkles in there. Now I'm thankful that it is made of steel, but it is quite a rusty steel. I'm just not thankful that they could have easily made a drain bolt at the lowest point here to make oil changes so much easier. Next up we have our oil pickup tube. This is going to splatter, isn't it? I'm going to use my wife's dress to protect my old shirt. So for a sec there I thought it was fully clogged up, but if I poke a pin through here, it's just the oil that kind of made that buildup look like that. Before I can remove the upper oil pan, I gotta get this oil cooler and filter assembly off. Oh no! Take a look at this filter. Looks pretty clean. I mean, it's black because it's diesel, but don't see any particles that stand out to me here. Looks like the oil cooler takes coolant from the cooling deck here. And then we got a couple of E10s here. Oil cooler, filter, and pressure switch assembly. Now with the engine upright, the rest of the oil draining down, I'm next going to remove this T45 for the oil pump. Screwdriver in here. Next I'm going to remove these E12s holding this bottom pan on. Get these E10s. My Mercedes approved oil pan removal tool here. And this will check to see if I missed any bolts. Pry. There's only 2 main cap bolts for these bearings. I don't see any damage to these bearings. Amazing, they held up pretty nicely for 300,000. I'm not suspecting any oiling issues on this thing. Connecting rods are now going to be offset at 120 degrees apart because that would be your firing order. I'm going to take off this oil pump chain over here on this side. I'm going to get these E8 connecting rod bolts off. Now if you guys remember, I was blaming Honda for using 8mm headed bolts for their connecting rod caps on their turbocharged L15 engines. Those were producing 150-200 horsepower. This is least acceptable because it's only 41 horsepower. Using the cloth here to wipe this down so we can look at the connecting rod bearings. And as you can see, connecting rod bearings are in decent shape. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove this crankshaft. Crankshaft's got a bit of weight to it. I'm going to go ahead and use my piston popper tool to push out these pistons from their bores. Taking a look at the piston design here, first thing I noticed that the head is very thick and heavy. Part of that is because they had to machine out this bowl here for the direct injection flame propagation. Also because diesels are compression ignition engines. That means as this piston is moving upward, you got a certain amount of air already in there, and you add fuel, it's just going to self-ignite. You don't need any spark plugs to ignite it, and you don't need a throttle body to control the amount of air in there. The crankshaft RPM is basically controlled by how much fuel you put into the engine. And of course, less parts always make cars more reliable. Diesel engines in general are also very sturdily and well built, as this one attested 300,000 kilometers. And as I mentioned before, this engine really has an old school design to it. Check out how thick those compression rings are. They're really sturdy on there. And let's check the oil control ring. This is so thick as well compared to the modern stuff. Look at that, it's got the plastic backing on there, and then inside of there you have the corrugated spring. But this channel in here is so big compared to low tension rings from nowadays, and that allows the oil to be scraped off the cylinder walls and go back in here as opposed to getting clogged up because this is too small. The engine's bore is actually quite tall, and you can see that in the connecting rod length. So even though it's only 0.8 liters in displacement, this engine does take up a lot of space vertically. So just for giggles, here's the Mercedes Smart 0.8 liter divided by 3 cylinder, or 0.267 liters of displacement on this cylinder, whereas on this guy he's got a 4 liter V8 or 0.5 liters of displacement. The big thing you'll notice is the connecting rods are a little bit longer, but the diameters is really what makes the difference here. And that's how you can see the Smart engine is so tall for what a small engine it is. So now that we're down to the bare block in this Mercedes Smart engine, let's take a quick look at the oil lubrication system. It's going to start at the bottom here where we have the oil pickup tube drawing in oil from over here, and that's then going to be sent to this oil pump on the front of the engine driven off of the timing chain. Now that oil pump is then going to send oil down to the side here where it's going to go to the cooler and the filter, and then be sent down this hole over here into the block. Now the engine block is going to take that oil and send it down to an oil galley that runs along the length of the block over here, and you can see these oil sprayers are going to tap off of it in order to lubricate and cool the cylinder walls with oil. These main bearings here are also drilled to tap down into that main oil galley, and you can see the end of that oil galley over here. Now the timing chain sensor also sits at the end of that oil gallery, and the oil is then going to split off and go down this way to the head. Also to note, we have an oil drain back and an oil supply from that oil gallery that's going to go to the turbocharger. Now the oil is going to come through this hole on the deck here where it's going to go through the head. Also to note, the cooling system, which is an open deck design, this is not a high stress, high power engine. And on the bottom of the head, the oil is going to head up through this hole here, and that oil is going to meet a cross drill oil gallery running along the length of the head to power these hydraulic lifters. And at the end of that oil gallery is where our hydraulic lifter had an issue. As you can see, there is a little bit of damage inside of that hydraulic lifter's pocket there, and where the rocker bumped into the head, and that would definitely cause some ticking and of course some misfiring if that valve is no longer opening. Now with that kind of racketing around and a misfire on only a 3-cylinder engine, you can imagine the amount of vibration and racketing this thing would cause. Now while the Smart car I think was a bad idea for North American roads, I think this engine design is actually pretty industrious and old school and held up pretty well. I'm just thankful that in the later generations they added that missing cylinder to this engine and made a bigger one so that it can accommodate our roads. Let's be honest, you don't want to be that cyclist stuck behind one of these cars. And that's a look inside of the OM606 Mercedes Smart diesel engine and how it works. Now I had good fun tearing down this engine and learning how it works. It's a bit different than our typical automotive engines that we see, and I look forward to tearing down more automotive technology and sharing it so we can all learn how it works. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more videos and teardowns just like this one. Now I gotta clean up all this diesel oil mess.